Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. I'm Randy Wright, and I'll be your captain on this solo flight special edition of our state-of-the-art radio program. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show while I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before I may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, after this Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando, Florida, we see that the Democrats' hatred for our shared United States Constitution, which, pursuant to Article 6, Clause 2, is the supreme law of the land, has been fully exposed. We see it. It's everywhere. But just in case some of us were just not seeing it or not connecting the dots here, West Virginia Democrat Senator Joe Manchin appeared on MSNBC's Morning Joe. Now, that's a laughable show, but it makes sense that one of the most frothing at the mouth Fabian Socialist senators in the entire Senate chamber would make his appearance there. And basically, when he was there, he started complaining with respect to Chris Murphy of Connecticut, another frothing of the mouth Fabian Socialist, attempt to deprive American citizens of their fundamental and inalienable right to keep and bear firearms, that they're running into some problems. And wouldn't you know that the problems that they're starting to run into are rooted in our shared United States Constitution. The fact that the Constitution, which inherently, by its very design, seeks to limit the power and ability of those who wield the reins of political power in our republic from being able to trample upon the fundamental and unalienable rights of the American citizens that were handed to them, endowed to them by their creator, the God of nature. It really should be no surprise to him. And the reason that I say that is because that was the very intent and purpose behind our foundational document. That great social contract was there to protect the rights of the people. Because as my first officer, Jeremy Grapington, has so oft times reiterated on past episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence the Wright Flyer, if we don't have our rights, we don't have anything. And that's really what it comes down to, folks. These nefarious forces are standing in staunch opposition to our fundamental and inalienable rights. They don't care about anything else, and this is what it comes down to. And it's funny, going back to that Morning Joe thing, Senator Manchin said that we have a firewall problem. And that's due process. You see, the amazing thing about the due process clause, both of them, the one in the Fifth Amendment and the one in the 14th Amendment as well, is that it requires anyone who's going to try and encroach upon the rights of the people, and not even really encroach upon, but limit those rights through adjudication, because that's what's required. It requires due process under the law. That means notice and a hearing. That means that you have to have a judicial hearing to be found to not have that right. In other words, it has to be adjudicated through our legal system to ensure that it's a very drastically important matter for the government to limit that right. And that's not something to be taken lightly, yet that's exactly what the Democrats and the detente wing of the gutless opposition party, or GOP, have been doing in response to this Orlando tragedy. It's not that they care about our rights. In fact, it's the exact and polar opposite. These charlatans, these hucksters, are there working in deliberate fashion to strip and deprive us of our rights, to amass power for themselves, to essentially say that they have the right to do whatever they want and we can all go to hell. Well, that's not how this one's going to work, because that's not how our nation was designed. That is the exact and polar opposite of the vision and foundation that our founding fathers had in mind for this country when they devised it well over 230 years ago. And it's time that we, both as a nation and as a people, come together in solidarity and unity and reject these voices that would do anything and everything in their power to strip and deprive us of our God-given natural rights. That's right, folks. It's a natural right because our Constitution is inspired by and based upon the natural law. And the natural law, by its very nature, is timeless. It's just as applicable today as it was 235 years ago, as God willing it will be 235 years from now. But it requires that we, the people, look out for these threats, proactively maintain and safeguard our fundamental and inalienable rights. And folks, there is no escaping that. There is no delegating that duty away. There is no denying that that duty and obligation, and above all responsibility, falls squarely on our shoulders. And I know that that is a very heavy burden to bear. But it is our burden to bear, not anyone else's. We can't delegate it, we can't ignore it, we can't turn away from it. But the Democrats have already shown, through their words, actions, and deeds, that they hate the Constitution. And it's so amazing that what Manchin was letting slip there on Morning Joe is that he, along with his entire party, have a problem with the Constitution limiting the power, scope, and application of government. But that's what it was designed to do. If you have a problem with that, give up your elective office. Because as an elected governmental official, these people have been required to swear an oath to uphold and defend and protect the Constitution from any and all threats and enemies, whether they be foreign or domestic. And really, what they need to do is look in the mirror, because they are the ones posing the threat to the Constitution. They are the ones demanding that we, the people, give up our essential liberties for a fleeting sense of security. And remember what Benjamin Franklin said with respect to that. He said that anyone who gives up their essential liberties for a fleeting sense of security deserve neither liberty nor security, and shall surely have neither. That's where we are. That is how this is unfurling before our very eyes. And of course, the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media aren't going to cover this. They're not going to analyze it in this fashion, because they too are adhering to a Fabian Socialist propagandistic agenda that has no place in an open and honest society like that of the United States of America. So here we are, folks, looking into the annals of history, and it's going to be interesting to see how we're judged in this juncture in our nation's relatively brief yet illustrious history. And the reason I say that is, when you stop and think about it for a moment, it is going to come down to the Constitution being the key, the linchpin that it has always been, the cornerstone of our system of polity and our system of justice and our very outlook on life. And if we fail to stand up for that now, history will judge us most harshly. There can be no question about that, because our founding fathers intended for us to hand these rights and our freedoms down to posterity. That means for the successive generations that are yet to be born. And that's the thing that we see here. We see that Senator Manchin apparently doesn't understand that our founding fathers intended for the Constitution to be one of limited government. And I'm going to actually say that he understands it, he just doesn't care. That's the thing. They don't care about the truth. They only care about their agenda. That has been all they've ever cared about and all they've ever worked for. And folks, that's why they are standing in staunch opposition to your fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. Because they fear you. They loathe and despise you. And they will do anything in their power to destroy you. That's how they view it. That's how they work towards it. That's how their little twisted minds work. And that's something we've mentioned on the Wright Flyer numerous times, because it comes down to that. The Orlando tragedy proves that the Democrats have an overarching anti-constitutional agenda. Recall that they said we shouldn't have First Amendment rights with respect to calling out the hoax that is man-made global warming, nor do they want us to call out Islamofascists. Here, they turn to the cancerous doctrines of political correctness and moral relativism. We see this that unfurls before our eyes that they have problems with the First Amendment, that's free speech, the Second Amendment, that's our fundamental and inalienable right to keep and bear firearms, the Fourth Amendment, that means our protection and guarantee against unreasonable searches and seizures, and the Fifth Amendment, which is due process. And with being unable to face your accusers, which is the Sixth Amendment, that is a huge portion of the Bill of Rights, which is the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution. Folks, we can't deny this, and we can't sweep it under the rug, and we can't just let them go forward attacking our rights like this. Because, being Fabian Socialists, they are trying to incrementally strip and deprive us of that which matters the most. Because recall, as Jeremy has reiterated so often on past episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, if we don't have our rights, then we are left with nothing. The entire reason that we have all of these rights is to protect us from governmental incursions. And that was the whole thing about the Bill of Rights. That was the major concern that our founding fathers had with respect to a centralized authority. Recall that they were fighting against the centralized authority of the Crown of Great Britain, the most powerful military force known to man at that time. And they just had an rightfully inherent distrust of any type of centralized authority because they understood that the nature of a centralized government and authority would be to march upon the rights of the American people, to trample upon them, to eventually become that leviathan of out-of-control, gigantic government. And that's the thing. It makes sense. It makes sense that we have to resist any type of agent provocateurs of tyranny, despotism, oppression. All of those things, which are there. They're there. And the fact that the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media refuses to cover this just shows how far entrenched with Fabian socialism they've become. It's as the great visionary Zygmunt Dobbs warned us in his magnus opus of Keynes at Harvard back in the 1950s, that we here in the United States of America are facing an infiltration by this foreign ideology that was originally devised by Karl Marx. And as Alexis Tocqueville said, anyone who adheres to any flavor of socialism is essentially a New Age feudalist. They want to control all of the daily facets of our lives. They want to control us from cradle until grave. But that goes against the very character, heritage, spirit, and national identity of the American people. And we can see from that they have engaged in this type of balkanization, using the tried and true, albeit threadbare tactics and strategies of divide and conquer. Because then it's more easy to distract the American people, to pit American citizen against American citizen, and then fundamentally transform the government. They want to whip us up into such an emotional frenzy that we forget what matters. That we forget that the whole aperture of our representative republic is greater than the sum of its parts. There is a greater good in the United States of America. And because they have been so successful in doing that, by infiltrating our institutions of education from coast to coast and border to border, by dominating our information media outlets, and by infiltrating the government, as we can see from people like Senator Manchin, Senator Feinstein, Frankenstein, and Chris Murphy, who filibustered our right. He actually stood on the Senate floor and filibustered our fundamental and inalienable God-given right to self-defense and to keep and bear firearms. And yet, the commander in Banana, President Peel and Squeal himself, has gone in front of the cameras for the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media and said, well, we can't refer to him like that. We can't call it Islamic radicalism or extremism because that would be bad. It would hurt their feelings. But you Americans who have been shot and killed, well, you know, it's ready access to firearms that empower these Islamofascists. But they're not really Islamofascists. They're rainbow unicorn-riding friends. And Islam is a friend of the gay community and all that stuff. What a bunch of malarkey. What a bunch of nonsense. But that's how they think. That is literally the twisted machinations that run through their thick skulls full of hot air. Because their cranial cavity is clearly not filled with brains, because if it were, they would understand that pursuant to Article 6, Clause 2 of the United States Constitution, the Constitution itself is the end-all, be-all, supreme law of the land. Anything that is contradictory to the clear and concise terms contained within its four corners is void ab initio, meaning not binding, not valid, illegitimate from the very beginning. But they don't want to think of it that way. That's too limiting. Remember, Senator Manchin said that, that whole due process thing, one of the fundamental and inalienable rights of the citizens is preventing us from attacking one of the other fundamental and inalienable rights of the citizens. And to all of those people who sit there and say that the Constitution is not protecting their rights, here is a glaring example of it. But you know what it is? It's a warning sign that we, the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving, flourishing, and dare I say vibrant representative republic of ours, have got to become proactive in maintaining, defending, and advancing our fundamental and inalienable rights. Because nobody else is going to do that. The way that our entire system of polity is designed, it requires we, the people, to do that. And we see that even though our founding fathers had this inherent distrust of the centralized government, people like Senator Manchin don't like it. They don't like the Constitution. But what's so amazing is they used to whine about the constitutional rights of non-citizens when it came to the detainees at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Folks, constitutional rights are not extended to foreign nationals. And particularly not when those foreign nationals have declared their own war against the United States. It's asinine. The way that they are acting, they are giving more credence to the Islamofascists than to American citizens. But again, that comes as no surprise. That's been their modus operandi now for generations. There's no denying it. You can't candy coat or sugarcoat that, folks. It's there. It's open and obvious. It is a clear and present danger to our representative Republican form of government. And unless and until we start thinking of it in this manner, this death spiral and tailspin that we see the United States of America afflicted with right now as I speak into this microphone will not only continue, it will accelerate and it will worsen. It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling that we, in the longest-lasting representative republic that this world has ever seen, have fallen to such a point. That these sorts of charlatans and hucksters can become powerful people. And yet, they have. The Fabian Socialists have accomplished so much in the past 150 years. They are pitting American citizen against American citizen, and this is the type of result that we are seeing arise from it. And the other thing that these people cared about, remember, they don't like our Constitution when it comes to our rights, but they sure wanted to give it to the prisoners of Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq. Who can forget that?
They were the ones running out there with their hands thrown up in the air. Oh, this is horrible. We can't stand this. We can't stand for this. That goes against our American values. What a bunch of crap. What a bunch of crap. In the light of all the anti-constitutional nonsense that is being foisted upon the American people, we find, however, a ray of truth. We see that a Florida gun store has unequivocally refused to sell firearm to Omar Mateen, that Islamofascist, who had perhaps some gay hankerings and desires of his own, who ran into the Pulse nightclub and shot the place up. Why did they refuse it? They suspected there was something wrong with him. And by the way, all of this push, even from the quaff-waffler mafioso himself, the New York billionaire real estate tycoon and all-around vulgarian Donald J. Trump, or is it John Barron or John Miller? I don't know which he's going by today. Either way, he said that he was going to meet with the National Rifle Association, or NRA, to discuss potentially prohibiting people on the no-fly list and the terrorism watch list from flying. But here's the thing with Omar Mateen, the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security, who are not even allowed to mention Islamofascism or jihad or anything like that because it might be offensive, had investigated Omar Mateen for a year and had decided that he was just bloviating, that his threats to, shoot somebody up, that's not real. His idea of committing Islamic jihad, well, we can't even write Islamic jihad, the paperwork's too tough. So, they took him off the list. So how are any of these safety measures, so-called, use air quotes when saying safety measures here, folks, would actually prevent this? None of them. Not a single one of them. And oh, by the way, those great and wonderful anti-gun laws that were put into place in the nation of France, how did that stop the Paris terrorist attacker? These things do not make people safer. They strip and deprive the true law-abiding American citizens, who happen to be the ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this country, if you take a look at the opening lines to the preamble to the Constitution, of their ability to defend themselves, of their ability to stand up to these threats and to put them down without prejudice. That's right. Without prejudice. Amazing. Again, there we see that these frothing at the mouth Fabian Socialists and their lapdog graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media are playing that twisted game of semantics. They're trying to change the entire aperture of the discussion here. They're trying to shift it away from those who are the real culprits behind these dastardly and diabolical attacks upon our fundamental and inalienable rights, and they're trying to wring their hands in the air and say, woe is me, henny penny, the sky is falling, this is terrible, we can't allow these right-wing extremists, because remember, J. Johnson there at the Department of Homeland Security agreeing with Salazar, the Austin mayor, that right-wing extremists are as bad as Islamofascists. Really? Let's see. When was the last time a constitutional compositionist flew a plane into a building? Let's see. Never. Okay. Let's see. When was the last time that we killed 3,000 people in an orchestrated attack for a religion while screaming Allahu Akbar? Oh, that's right, never! In other words, these people are peddling bovine excrement. They are bovine excrement artists. Well, that's not good for the nation. And yet these are the people that are in power. These are the people that are making our security decisions. Give me an ever-loving break. Give me an ever-loving break, because it is not going to help us. There is nothing good to be taken away from any of this. But of course, the Florida gun store is being ignored. And that's because it gets in the way of their propagandistic agenda. And again, folks, this just proves how vigilant we have to be with respect to our fundamental and inalienable rights. No one else is going to defend these rights. That duty, that obligation, and above all, that responsibility falls squarely upon our shoulders, as I've already said. And people like Senator Manchin and people like Senator Chris Murphy prove just how diametrically opposed these charlatans are to our ability to defend ourselves, to our national security, to everything that we hold near and dear in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. And let's be honest, folks, there is no way to deny this. They have gone out into the open and made this perfectly clear that that's exactly what they are doing. And you see, this idea that we have to stand up for our fundamental and inalienable rights, that comes straight from our founding fathers themselves. That's how they designed this republic to work, because they did not want one branch of government or one level of government to fully control all of the facets of our daily lives. It wouldn't have even crossed their minds. That would have been wholly unacceptable. And you see, throughout it all, the major problem that faces us is this attempt to tear our Constitution down from the top down. The detente wing of the gutless opposition party, or GOP, isn't going to stand up for our rights. They've already shown a willingness to cave. We've seen that as they've already agreed to have a vote on this. Mitch the Turtle McConnell is happily marching in lockstep with the Chiquita-in-Chief, President Peel and Squeal himself's radical anti-gun agenda. He wants to duck into his shell and just ignore the truth. Mitch, go to hell, please. You're not doing your job, you're just standing in the way of the American people, and you are threatening their rights just as much as the Barack Hussein Obama regime. And this is just the same that they have done with any and everything else with respect to what Obama has been attempting to foist upon the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty here. This is why they are the gutless opposition party. They're not the grand old party, they're gutless. They're spineless, and that includes the quaff-waffler, mafioso himself, Donaldoff, Julius Caesar, Trumpolini. Again, this is why it is absolutely critical that we all foster a fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared Constitution and thereby our fundamental and inalienable rights. It empowers each and every one of us to stand up to the government and reiterate the most powerful two-letter, almost universally understood word in the English vernacular: no. No, you cannot trample upon my fundamental and inalienable rights. No, you cannot fundamentally transform our representative republic. No, you will not stand up for the rights of terrorists over those of the American people. The very fact that we even have to discuss this shows how much our nation is in dire straits. People like Senator Manchin, Joey over there, and his good frothing of the mouth's posterior buddy, Chris Murphy. They're not looking out for our interests, and that's the great intellectually disingenuous thing about what they're saying and doing. It's that they wrap it in the veneer of, oh, well, we have to defend the American citizens. The only way that we can stop this is to clearly state to the American people that, you know, your guns, that's how the terrorists attacked us. No, it's not. It simply isn't. If we fail to stand up for our rights now, then as I said earlier, we are going to be judged most harshly by history. We cannot turn away from this. We cannot walk away from it. We cannot ignore it. It is there in front of us, and it is our duty, our obligation, and above all, our responsibility to stand up for our rights. That's why we are seeking to empower the people, because the people are the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this country. That's the way it was always meant to be. And those who are trying to trample upon those rights are the ones who are in the wrong. They're not looking out for you, as I've already said. We want you to be empowered. And that is why we will never back down from standing up to these people who are trying to strip and deprive us of our fundamental and inalienable rights. Another important lesson that we need to take away from all of this is that it's not just Democrats who are targeting our fundamental and inalienable rights. And I know that this is something that Jeremy and I have oftentimes reiterated on past episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, but think about it. We see that the presumptive gunless opposition party or GOP nominee, Donald J. Trump, is taking the same stance as Democrats with respect to the anti-gun issue. You see, the thing that we have to keep in mind with respect to the no-fly, no-buy, or we cry initiative that has been foisted upon us not only by the Fabian Socialist Democrats, but also by our Fabian Socialist presumptive nominee to the gutless opposition party, is that it doesn't provide due process. Remember, that was what Senator Manchin was whining about in the previous segment. And it was because they're finding that the legal apparatus of what they're trying to do, infringing upon the rights of the American people, really does not cut it when it comes to the application of constitutional law. And that's just something that needs to be kept in mind. But we see that from the very beginning, ever since he officially threw his quaff into the ring back in back in July of 2015, Trump has not once said anything about the Constitution. He's not said anything about standing up for our constitutional rights. It has just been about advocating his own personal self-aggrandizement, and we just cannot afford to allow that to continue because it is operating in such a fashion that it hurts us. It goes against all that we hold near and dear, in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. And as we look at these things here, particularly to the anti-constitutional aspect of this by Trump demanding that people who are on the terrorism watch list and no-fly list be prohibited from purchasing firearms, the constitutional problem continues to be there. The secretive nature of this entire program is diametrically opposed to so many fundamental pillars that are found in the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of the United States Constitution. And the longer that we ignore that, the longer we're going to continue to have this problem, because it is a truly well-orchestrated attack or affront on our fundamental and inalienable rights. And we just can't afford to ignore this, because every aspect of what they're doing is fundamentally opposed to the foundational image that our founding fathers had for this country since its foundation 235 years ago. And it's as we have stated so many times on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, the Second Amendment right to keep and bear firearms is one of our fundamental and inalienable rights. That's why it's included in the Bill of Rights or the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution. And our founding fathers had included that within the Constitution because they very rightly feared the ability of the government to essentially become rogue, tyrannical, and illegitimate, to go beyond the means of what was provided for it within the Constitution and thereby trample upon the rights of the citizens. And so it was necessary to put those protections in to ensure that our federal government would not become this tyrannical thing that it's become today. And that's another reason why my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton, and I have also stated that the further that we divorce ourselves and distance ourselves from the tenets of the Constitution, the greater these problems that are currently facing us, both as a nation and a people, will become. Because it's going in a direction that is diametrically opposed to the way this country was designed. And the very impetus that's at the heart of our once thriving and flourishing representative republic is that we, the people, are the ultimate wielders of sovereignty. And apparently, Trump doesn't understand this. Certainly, Senator Manchin doesn't understand it, and Senator Chris Murphy, doesn't understand it. And they're just going to continue to march lockstep in this approach of trampling upon our rights because, again, it's about power. It's not about protecting people. It's about power. And without due process, without notice and a hearing, these rights cannot be taken away, and the courts will shoot them down. But that's the thing. The people won't know about this until they attempt to go onto a plane or until they attempt to purchase a firearm. And then it's a very arduous and difficult process to get yourself removed from the list, and it's very easy to erroneously be placed on the list. Ted Kennedy had been placed on it. He probably deserved it, but they had included him. So you see, this is a very dangerous area. And I know that there are some in the frothing at the mouth Fabian Socialists that sit there and say, why does it matter if they can do it when you fly? Why can't they do that with the ability to own firearms? Well, there's no constitutional right to fly. There is a constitutional right to keep and bear firearms. And yes, there is the privileges and immunities that would prohibit the government from banning you from traveling across state lines, but the argument that they would make is that an airplane is not the only way that you can travel across state lines. They're more concerned with international, but even just pedestrian flights, meaning within the domestic arena, could be devastating, as we saw in 9/11. And okay, sure, I understand that, but again, at least with the fundamental and inalienable right to keep and bear firearms, there is a true prohibition there by the supreme law of the land. And the Democrats, and indeed Trump himself, seem to not care one iota about that. They are just hell-bent on tearing this nation apart at the seams. And what is it going to get us? What is it going to get us both as a people and a nation? It's not going to get us much. The reason I say that is it's going to violate all that we hold near and dear. And I know that it seems as though I'm repeating that a bit here, but it's because it's so necessary. Everywhere we turn, our rights are under a threat. So, again, instead of focusing on the real threat here, that of Islamofascism and terrorists, Trump is targeting the fundamental and inalienable right of the citizens to keep and bear firearms. And sure, he's going out there and saying it's an act of terrorism, but much like little Gretchen Carlson that I mentioned on the last solo flight program was trying to say that we could continue to adhere to the Constitution and the Second Amendment while also banning assault weapons. It's this type of retarded thinking, for lack of a better term, and I don't care if that's offensive, because we have declared war on political correctness here, but this retarding type of thought, because it retards the American people's rights, it is diametrically opposed to the open and honest system that the United States of America's Federalist Representative Republic was designed to be. And we see that these forces just don't care about that. They think that it's time that we abandon the Constitution, that we abandon the natural law tenets that form the bedrock foundation of our once thriving republic, and embrace these systems that have been tried and true failures throughout their course in history. And we need to juxtapose that to what is really quintessentially important with respect to our Constitution, which is the fact that it is the longest contiguous, uninterrupted constitutional document and government in all of world history. 235 years, that is an incredible amount of time, and for a government to not fall. Because no other government on earth has gone that long without it. And that is a testament to the infinite wisdom and foresight that our founding fathers had when they devised this government. It shows that the amendment process does work, and I've seen some of the Fabian Socialists sit there and whine about that as well, saying, well, the last time that the Constitution was amended was in 1992. Yeah, that shows that in the grand scheme of things, we are at that position. We have a very stable government, and it should not just be readily changed. That's why Article 5 of the Constitution places those rigorous restrictions on the mechanisms by which we amend the Constitution. It's not to be taken lightly. That is the supreme law of the land, based on the supremacy clause that's found in Article 6, Clause 2. But the fact that Trump is not who he claims to be is what we have been warning you about. And nevertheless, the Lion Trumpidians aren't listening. They'll make up any excuse that comes to their limited minds to attack those of us who are standing up for our rights. This is why they turned their backs on the only candidate who was standing up for our rights, that being Texas Senator Ted Cruz. That's the most dangerous aspect about both of the presumptive nominees for the two mainstay parties. They are acting in such a way that they are both marching down a path that would strip and deprive the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty of their fundamental and inalienable rights. And they're doing it in a masquerade form. They're trying to mask this as saying that they're standing up for national security, that they are doing it to protect the sovereigns. But again, as I mentioned in the previous segment, when Benjamin Franklin said that those who give up essential liberty for a fleeting sense of security deserve neither liberty nor security and shall surely have neither, that's what's unfurling here. This is the very type of scenario that he was speaking about when he said that quote. And it is a very famous quote, and it should be, because it goes to the heart of the matter of what is facing this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours and the community of popular sovereigns. Because the way that the Fabian Socialists have infiltrated our institutions of education, our institutions of information, media, sources, and outlets, all of these things are coinciding together to create this massive problem that is a juggernaut of tyranny and oppression threatening to strangle out our rights. Because if you think about it, the Second Amendment was included in the Bill of Rights to protect us from governmental encroachments. Now, of course, we know that they'll make that intellectually disingenuous, emotionally charged argument that, well, the Founding Fathers would have never, ever guessed that we'd have these kinds of weapons. Wrong, 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 wrong. Because at the time of the American Revolution, the Minutemen carried the Kentucky and Pennsylvania long rifles. Those were inherently superior to the smoothbore Brown Bess musket that was carried by the British regulars. It gave them an edge over the military. So, no, they wouldn't have viewed this as some sort of horrific or unimaginable or inconceivable device. Firearms are merely tools, folks. They're merely tools to be used to defend our liberty, to defend our homes, to provide food, and to provide, in the cases of going out and target shooting, stress relief and entertainment. But the stress relief and entertainment is what the left is focusing on. They want to make it to say that that's all the Second Amendment's about. And you see, that's why they always try and misquote the militia clause. First, they try and say that it meant that the right was only for militias, but militias can't have rights. Only people can have rights, and only the people are the popular sovereigns of this republic. And then they tried and say, well, that meant it's just for hunting or home defense. No, now you're ignoring the militia clause. You see, that's the thing. They are purposefully being obtuse. They are going out of their way to misread the Constitution because they're trying to play that twisted game of semantics. as we have warned about since we first took off over the friendly airwaves back on September 11th of 2015. That is what these nefarious Fabian Socialists left-wingers always do. They always attempt to misread things and to attack things that are of the utmost importance to we the people. And because both of the presumptive nominees of the mainstay parties want to follow the Constitution, this means that we, the people, are the ones who have to stand up for it because we stand to lose everything. Because as Jeremy has so frequently reiterated on past episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, if we lose our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights, we lose everything. We have nothing. Because if one of those rights is the right to life, how do you defend that right if you don't have the right to keep and bear firearms? It's very difficult, and that's what they want. They want to be able to orchestrate massacres for anyone who would dare stand up to their twisted, radical Fabian socialist ideology that has no place in an open and honest society like that of the United States of America. And unless and until we start to come to terms with this and admit that that is the gravity of the situation that faces us, both as a people and a nation, they are going to continue their lockstep push towards tyranny, despotism, and oppression. These are wannabe potentates, folks. They are narcissists at heart. They don't care about our fundamental and inalienable rights. They are working for their own self-aggrandizement at the expense of the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty, we the people. And that's what we've been warning about since we first come on the air. And the amazing thing here, with this untenable and unacceptable situation that faces us, is that Trump had a golden opportunity to stand up for the rights of the American people. Sure, he did play lip service to saying that we need to just ban Muslim immigration into the country. But at the same time, he's marching along the Democrat talking points of attempting to prohibit people from exercising their fundamental and inalienable right to keep and bear firearms by the no buy, no fly, or we cry bill. He's pushing for that. He said he was going to meet with the NRA to discuss it. And he trapped them. He trapped them for endorsing him. He threw that into his tweet, and that is unfurling before our very eyes, making the situation that faces this country all the worse. Because it's giving credibility to the position he's taking there. Now, the NRA was quick to say that their position remains unchanged. It doesn't matter. The Trumpidians are going to sit there and say that he's right and that they did endorse him, and that means that they endorsed everything because for them, everything's set in stone. It's immovable. Everything has got to be right that their fearless leader says, and anything that goes against what their fearless leader says must clearly be wrong, must be clearly out of touch with reality. But that's unacceptable. That is not the way that the natural law works. That's not the way that our fundamental and inalienable rights work. And again, it falls on us, as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, to stand up for our rights, because nobody else is going to do it. That duty and the onus of that duty is strictly on us. We have to understand what it is that our rights are, and then we must be proactive in safeguarding and maintaining those rights. Because by the very design of our representative Republican form of government, that onus is and has always been and should only ever be on our shoulders. And you see, the amazing thing with respect to Trump's lost golden opportunity here is that had he done the right thing and stood up for the Second Amendment right, he could have pushed and maybe even provided that elusive unity that the detente wing of the gutless opposition party and the lion branch Trumpidians try to badger us with. That was a perfect opportunity to actually gain some ground, because he's clearly floundering in all of the most recent polls. He's not doing well. He's proving to be the mafioso quafioso that we warned he would always be. And it's not going to play out well for the United States of America. And it's certainly not going to play out well for the American citizens. But Trump cannot resist being a moron. He loves it. It's what he does best. Because that has been his modus operandi for such a long time that we just can't deny that or ignore that. It's there, plain as day, to see for anyone who's observing it in an objective fashion. And, you know, folks, now more than ever, it is vitally important that we stand up for our fundamental rights. These are our rights. The Constitution belongs to us, we the people. It does not belong to these charlatans and these hucksters who are doing everything in their power to strip and deprive us of all that we hold near and dear. They are the ones that are in the wrong. They are the ones that are politicizing this and using this tragedy in order to advance their propagandistic goals and agenda. Again, we should not be doing that here in the United States. We should be embracing our fundamental and inalienable rights, because that is what our founding fathers would demand and expect of us. And the longer that we refuse to do so, the longer that we allow this to fester, the greater this problem is going to become, and the more difficult it's going to be to overcome these hurdles and adversities that they are attempting to place in our path. The amazing thing is, what they're trying to do here is to strip and deprive us of our rights, to punish us for the deeds of Islamofascists. And we know that the left and the détente wing of the gutless opposition party will stop at nothing to target our rights. Democrat Senator Chris Murphy, as I mentioned, the one from Connecticut, led a 15-hour filibuster against our rights the other day. Once again, he doesn't care about the safety of the people. Remember, the FBI director warned last year that if we allowed the no-fly, no-buy, or we cry bill in, it would alert those on the no-fly list that they were being targeted, because when they attempt to purchase the firearms, they wouldn't be able to do so. That would make them go underground. It would make them more difficult to find. That would place us in an even more untenable situation than what we currently face right here, right now. But they don't care. It's about their Fabian Socialist agenda. They hate the Constitution, and they are doing everything in their power to annihilate and destroy it, because that has been their modus operandi for the past century and a half. The Dems just don't care. It's not about safety again. It's about control. But the way that our country was designed, and the true fundamental tenets that are contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution, make it clear that the power belongs to the people. It does not belong to the federal government. The federal government was designed to be one of limited powers that must trace its authority back to a power that is specifically enumerated to it in the clear and concise constitutional language. Certainly, that is not what was enumerated to them, because pursuant to Article 5 and the preamble to the Bill of Rights and the Second Amendment, the Second Amendment itself is an intrinsic part of the Constitution. It is part of the supreme law of the land, and what they are trying to do is obfuscate that, to work around that, to deny us that, while saying that they are still operating within the confines of the Constitution. How do you do that? How do you do that with a straight face? You can't. Because what they are really doing is working against our best interests, and that's all they have ever been doing. And again, it is our duty and our obligation, as well as responsibility, to stand up and say no. No, you cannot encroach upon our fundamental and inalienable rights. No, you cannot put the rights, or so-called or alleged rights, of these Islamofascists over ours. And yes, the shooter in this case happened to be an American citizen. Yes, he still has those rights, except that he renounced his citizenship when he dialed 911 and said, Allahu Akbar, Durka Allah, Sherpa Allah Durka, al-Baghdadi. You know, Abu al-Baghdadi is who he gave his allegiance to. And he was doing this for Islam. And yet the president, and to a lesser extent Donald Trump, want to blame guns. The president says, we're not sure his motives. He told us what his motives were. Why do we deny that? It's as good as a confession. That's what we're facing. That's the stark, harsh reality. But no, the president wants to suffer from that acute ostrich syndrome of having his head crammed up his posterior to deny the truth, to continue his tirade and his designs against our fundamental and inalienable rights. Where does it all end, folks? Well, with these people, it will end with serfdom. That's why Alexis Tocqueville compared any form, flavor, or facet of socialism to New Age feudalism. It is about stripping and depriving the American people of their ability to think and act for themselves, making them wholly dependent upon the federal government. That is feudalism. Remember the peasants, or the villains as they were called, that meant landless peasant or serf in medieval culture. They were wholly dependent upon the feudal system. They were not allowed to move about. They were not allowed to own property. They were not allowed to do anything. They couldn't even get married without the permission of their lord. That's where these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialists wish to plunge the United States of America. And folks, if that sounds like a horrific system, it's because it is. And this is the commonality between the Dems and Don Trumpolini. Because it's all about control. They don't care a thing about our rights. But as my first officer, Jeremy Grapington, has so frequently stated, without our rights, we're left with nothing. How do you defend your right to life if you don't have the means to do so? This, again, must be addressed. Because if we don't, and we allow these nefarious forces to trample upon our rights, this struggle will become all the worse. And to place this country back onto the path to prosperity will become all the more difficult. We can't ignore that. We cannot allow these people who have purposefully, willfully, deliberately, in a well-orchestrated plot, attacked our rights to have success. Because if you think about it, it's either life or death for the body politique of this once thriving, flourishing, vibrant community of popular sovereigns and representative republic. Our duty and our obligation remains to be the ones that stand up and defend our rights. And I know that's not an easy position to hold, but it's always been our duty. It has always been our place to do so. And that is why our system of government was designed the way that it was. But far too many have put the blinders on. They're going off of raw emotionalism again, and that plays right into the hands of these twisted Fabian socialists who don't give a damn about we the people. And the more we look at that, the more we have to come to terms with the fact that they are acting in such a deliberate fashion to strip and deprive us of our fundamental and inalienable rights. And that is not an easy position to admit, particularly when you consider just how far we have fallen from the proper scope and application of government as outlined and even mandated by the clear and concise language of the Constitution. No one wants to admit, or at least other than Ted Cruz and a few others that are up there or vying for high office, that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Why is that so difficult? This is not a concept that requires rocket surgery. You don't need Dr. Ben I'm a Victim Carson to figure this out. But it's because they're being deliberately obtuse. They're going out of their way to ignore the truth because they know the truth stands in stark and staunch opposition to their dark, twisted machinations that are seeking to disarm us. And remember what Niccolo Machiavelli said in his magnus opus, The Prince, that a prince who disarms his people dishonors his people. Well, folks, there can be no question that they are dishonoring us. They are seeking to kowtow to those who have killed us and who are on the warpath to destroy us and everything that we stand for and represent, and punishing us. How does that make any sense? The fact of the matter is it doesn't make any sense, because what they're doing is not based in logic. It's based in raw emotionalism, and they are diametrically opposed to we the people. And the only ones who can put a stop to all of this malarkey and madness is none other than we the people ourselves. That's why we must band together in solidarity and unity and give this unwavering message to them that no, they cannot deprive and strip us of our fundamental and inalienable rights. No means no. It all comes down to there is this attempt by those who currently wield the reins of political power to strip and deprive and deny the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours of their fundamental and inalienable rights. These are the same types of people that are always part of the Blame America First crowd, or else they are so afraid of the cancerous doctrines of moral relativism and political correctness that they will be labeled as haters, for lack of a better term, by the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media and all of these other various nefarious forces that they are afraid to act. Now, there are some rare exceptions to this. Texas Senator Ted Cruz is one, Mike Lee of Utah is another, Ben Sasse of Nebraska is another, and these are the people that need to be applauded for their efforts to stand up for our fundamental and unalienable rights. Unlike Senate Majority Leader Mitch the Turtle McConnell, who's just trying to duck into his shell, to tuck away from it all, to ignore the staunch facts of reality that are out there facing each and every one of us, they are just going to sit there and twiddle their thumbs and blame American citizens' access to firearms. This is the false narrative. This is the narrative that the Fabian Socialists wish to thrust upon us, and they have been working on this in incremental fashion now for 150 years, for a century and a half now. There's no denying this. That has been what their modus operandi has been for such a long time. And they seek to do it by indoctrinating the up-and-coming generations, and indeed those generations which have yet to be born. They do it by trying to play these little twisted games of semantics and everything else. You know, many people want to deny the fact that the reason Obama won't blame Islamofascists for these attacks is because he agrees with them. That's been his shtick ever since he first, latched on to the reins of political power in this country back in January of 2009. He loves those who are trying to kill the United States because deep down in his heart of hearts, he loathes and despises the United States and the American people. There is no other way to paint that. And I know that this is going to irritate a lot of the frothing of the mouth and mouth-breathing Fabian Socialists, but it's true. How do we ignore that? How do we get past that? How do we sweep this under the rug and just deny that it's there, or candy coat or sugarcoat it? You can't. Because it's the truth. And as Aristotle said in his Art of Rhetoric, it is much easier to accept and believe the truth than it is to buy into one of these wanton lies, and the entire Fabian Socialist apparatus and movement and ideology, as well as philosophy, is based off of nothing but a series of lies. And they will do anything in their power to advance that agenda, irrespective of the malicious and deleterious impact that it has on the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, we the people. But why? Why does it always come down to that? Because they don't want us to think for ourselves. They don't want us to be able to act in our own self-interest, to be able to promote our own thoughts, to be able to be rugged individualists and independently minded people as we have always been. because that would, give them all of the sorts of resistance that they know they can't withstand. They know that their dark and twisted machinations and ideology cannot stand in the marketplace of ideas. They know that the people, if they really fully understood what these charlatans are trying to do to us, would resist them with everything in their power. Now, the idea that Obama won't stand up to these Islamofascists is all about political power. And you know that we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, don't like Trump, but I don't think he's wrong when he claims that Obama probably had a hand in assisting these terrorists. I know that's quite a strong allegation to make, but these gun-free zones and stripping and depriving the popular sovereigns of their ability to keep and bear firearms plays directly into the hands of empowering them. It allows them to be able to carry out their twisted machinations irrespective of what it does to we the people. And that's something we've been warning about here on Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, for quite some time now. Because we want to empower the people. The people are, by the very design of our representative republic, the ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty. And yet it is we who get punished by these charlatans. It is we who are blamed for all that goes awry. Why? Again, power. Power, power, power. That's what these people care about. And Trump is right to point that out. However, that's where credit for Trump ends. Because, as I mentioned in the last segment, Trump is pursuing the same anti-gun policy as President Peel and Squeal himself. This isn't in the best interests of the American people. Yet, that doesn't matter to the nefarious forces who are hell-bent on denying us our fundamental and inalienable rights. Enough is enough. It's time we stand up for these things that matter most. And that's our rights. Our rights are what matter the most. The state of affairs in the United States of America is dire right now. There can be no question that the politicians and the presumptive nominees for the highest office in the land stand in stark opposition to our fundamental and inalienable rights. To deny this is simply to close one's eyes to the truth. And that's what the Fabian Socialists want. They want us to close our eyes to the truth. But we can't do that. We can't afford to. Not now. Not when our nation is in the precarious situation and position that it is as I speak into this microphone. Everywhere we turn, we see that the United States of America is under attack, that our fundamental and inalienable rights are under assault, and this is all by design. All by design. To look away from this would be a great disservice for all of us. Despite all of it, the truth always has a way of coming through. We here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, are dedicated to the truth. We always have been, we always will be. That is the vow that we have made to you, our cherished listening passengers and audience members, and we will never turn our backs on that mission statement. Because it's all too important. It's all encompassing. We stand to lose everything unless we do our part in our capacity as popular sovereigns to stand up for and defend our fundamental and inalienable rights. No one else will do this. That's our duty and our obligation, and we take this duty and obligation, and above all responsibility, very seriously. Because if we fail to do so, we lose everything. That is the stakes of the game, so to speak. And they, being the Fabian Socialists, will never back off. They will never stop. They will never capitulate to us unless we overwhelmingly defeat them. And that means even if they have an R after their name, because it's not about political parties, it's about the Constitution. Our loyalty is to the Constitution, not to political parties. That's the type of factionalization that George Washington warned us of, that would allow a tyranny to set root in this very country if we weren't careful, if we abided by and devolved into factionalization, because it's essentially placing blinders on it. To describe it in such a way as party loyalty first, that means that you lose the greater oversight of protecting the Constitution, the greater good of the country. That's why you see the balkanization and all of this divisiveness that has begun to take root in the body politic of this once thriving, flourishing, and vibrant representative republic and community of popular sovereigns of ours. And it's not an easy position to be placed in. I know that. And I know it's not easy to realize that our country is under the sorts of attack from within that it is, but there's no denying it when you look at it in an objective fashion. We are tasked with protecting all that we hold near and dear. And of course, this really shouldn't be a difficult concept to comprehend. You don't need a rocket surgeon like Dr. Ben I'm a Victim Carson to really figure this out. All of those who hold positions of power and authority must swear an oath to uphold and defend the United States Constitution from enemies both foreign and domestic, yet they are becoming the domestic enemies. When they sit there and attack our rights and blame us and say that we have to learn and use this patronizing language with us as Obama has, instead of going after those who are really trying to kill us, they want to punish us. I know that I've mentioned this already, but it goes to the heart of the Fabian Socialist system and mindset. It is all based on stripping and depriving the people of their fundamental and inalienable rights, and they will stop at nothing to achieve this goal. They see a light at the end of the tunnel. That's why Vermont Senator
Noidface Boyd me Sandor's the flying saucer. I love my sauce. Free Thunderboyd liquor for everybody as long as I don't have to pay for it.
That can run as a self-avowed socialist, which is New Age feudalism in this country, and do as well as he did. That's shocking. It shows just how far the Fabian Socialists have come, just how close they are to achieving their twisted and radical agenda and ideology. And again, it is not something we can stand for in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, because it threatens to destroy everything. It threatens to take everything away from us, and without our rights, we are left with nothing. Clearly, we would be left with nothing. And when we fail to hold these people accountable for their misdeeds, it gives them the go-ahead to continue down this path of evil. And yes, folks, it is evil. I know it's not politically correct for me to say so, but it is. It is diametrically opposed to the natural law, and anything that goes against the natural law is, by its nature, wicked and evil. That's why the Fabian Socialists have dedicated everything to Satan. Look at their Bible. Rules for Radicals by that moron, Saul Alinsky. He dedicated it to Lucifer. And then look at the original iconography of the Fabian Socialist Society that traces its origins back to 19th century Great Britain. It was a wolf in sheep's clothing. Once again, Scripture describes that as the way that Satan would infiltrate society, to pervert all that is good. If that's not evil, I don't know what is. No, it is evil. They are the agent provocateurs of evil, tyranny, despotism, and absolutism. They want full control, and they don't care how they achieve it, and they don't care who they hurt in the process of attempting to achieve it. That is the stark, harsh reality that we have to awaken to in this country. If we are ever to overcome these hurdles, adversities, and obstacles that are in our path, we have to be vigilant. We have to be willing to go the extra mile to stand up for and defend our fundamental and inalienable rights. People like Senator Manchin and Chris Murphy, who sit there and try and trample upon our rights, deserve nothing but loathing contempt, because they are the ones that are being the standard bearers for depriving us of our liberty. How can you not look at that and think it's evil? Well, if you're not informed, that's one way, or if you're just lazy and don't care, that's another way. Complacency is a real danger. The notion of entropy is a real threat, and the sooner that we awaken to these realities, of these dangers that face us, the better able we will be to stand up to them, to combat them, and to do what's right for our country. And it's not easy. I understand that. What we are setting ourselves to do here is exceedingly difficult. But nothing worth having ever comes easily. That's the old adage that just rings true. Because what we have here in our country is the longest lasting, most open, honest form of government that has ever been conceived, rather, by the hands of men, yet divinely inspired by providence above. The natural law, by its nature, is timeless. And that's why our country has lasted for as long as it has. But these creeping forces of evil that want to eradicate all that we hold near and dear, they are the ones to be held accountable for this. They are the ones that created this. They are the ones who are harming the American people. And there really is no way to deny that. Just look at the positions they have assumed. They just don't care about us. The fact that these politicians want to prevent us from saying anything bad about the Islamofascists who kill us, while at the same time attempting to deprive us of our means of defense, proves that they don't care about the citizenry. They only care about themselves. They only care about their own avenues of power and their ability to trample upon the fundamental and inalienable rights of we the people, the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty. Why? They don't care further that this goes against the Constitution, that it goes against everything that our founding fathers had in mind when they devised this country 235 years ago. They think they know better. That's the way these Fabian Socialists always operate. Well, sure, socialism's never really worked wherever it's been implemented. It's always spread misery, but that's just because the wrong people attempted to put it into place. We can do it. We're right. We're smarter. No, you're not. And how presumptuous to presume that you are. That's the type of narcissism that we face, and it's a shared characteristic between Hillary Rotten Clinton and the quaff waffler himself. The quaffioso mafioso doesn't care about we the people. He's just going to double down on his efforts for power. That's why when he appeared on Megyn Kelly's show the last time, he was sitting there saying that if he were to lose the presidential race, that it would just be a colossal waste of time and money. No mention that it would be bad for the people. No mention that it would be bad for our system of polity. But if we recall, back in 2009, he said that he thought, or actually back in 2008, he said he thought that Hillary Clinton would make a fantastic president. And then he congratulated Obama and said that he was doing a good job with the bank bailouts because he was doing things that nobody else could do. Yeah, he's right about that. He was doing things that no one else had really been able to accomplish, unraveling the societal fabric and framework of the United States. But that's not something to be proud of. That's not something to applaud. Yet this guy is the presumptive nominee of the gutless opposition party, or GOP? Have we lost our collective minds? Well, it sure seems like it when we look at the way he's imploding right now. And we see that he's adopting the same line of argument and thinking that people like Senator Munchkin over there in West Virginia has. Hey, Senator Munchkin, I've got a very, very important message for you. Go to hell. And take that Chris Murphy jackwad with you as well. I think it's all the more clear now, folks, as to why the mascot of the Democrat Party is a jackass. It's because it's filled with jackasses who don't give a damn about our fundamental and inalienable rights. It's filled with all of these wannabe totalitarians and potentates that wish to strip and deprive us of all that we hold near and dear. These are the type of people that we have to stand up against because what they are doing has no place in an open and honest society like that of the United States of America. And we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, are dedicated to stopping them. We are dedicated to putting an end to their charade because what it is doing is working against our best interests. What they are doing is seeking to strip and deprive us of everything that matters, everything that we hold near and dear. Well, that's not going to work. We're not going to tolerate that. We're not going to stand for that. Because we understand that our Constitution is sacrosanct. Now, it's important to note, again, folks, that not all of the political leaders we have are of the mindset of which I was just discussing. Texas Senator Ted Cruz took to the Senate floor to defend our fundamental and inalienable right to keep and bear firearms. He attacked the Democrats for using this tragic shooting at the Pulse gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida, to attack our fundamental right to keep and bear firearms. He said what they're doing is insulting. And yes, it is insulting. But I don't want you to just take my word for it, so I'm going to key up his speech. It's about 3 minutes, and then we'll delve in and analyze it a little bit.
Madam President, our nation is at war. 5 days ago, we saw a horrific terror attack in Orlando, Florida. From September 11th to the Boston Marathon, from Fort Hood to Chattanooga, from San Bernardino to this attack in Orlando, radical Islamic terrorism has declared jihad on America. As the facts have unfolded, it now indicates that the Orlando terrorist has pledged his allegiance to ISIS in the process of murdering 49 and wounding more than 50 at a nightclub. All of us, our hearts go out to those who were murdered, to the families of those who were victims and who are grieving. We stand in solidarity. We lift them up in prayer at this horrific act of terrorism. But it is also a time for action. We need a commander-in-chief who will speak the truth, who will address the enemy we face, who will unleash the full force and fury of the American military on defeating ISIS and defeating radical Islamic terrorism. In the wake of the attack, many of us predicted what would unfold. And it was sadly the same political tale we have seen over and over again. Many of us predicted that Democrats would, as a matter of rigid partisan ideology, refuse even to say the words radical Islamic terrorism. That they would suggest this attack was yet another isolated incident, one lone criminal not connected to any global ideology, not connected to any global jihad. And that even worse, they would try to use it as an excuse to go after the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens. Madam President, I wish when we predicted that we had been proven incorrect. But this week played out all too predictably. Yesterday, we saw a political show on the Senate floor. Democrat after Democrat standing for hours, incensed, not at ISIS, incensed not at radical Islamic terrorism, incensed that Americans have a right to keep and bear arms. This is political distraction. This is political gamesmanship. And I think the American people find it ridiculous that in response to an ISIS terror attack, the Democrats go on high dudgeon that we've got to restrict the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens. This is not a gun control issue. This is a terrorism issue.
He's absolutely right. It is not a gun control issue. It is a terrorism issue. But as he said there, the Democrats are going to go down their political talking points. They're going to go down their line of trying to strip and deprive us of our fundamental and inalienable rights. But as I mentioned earlier, it's not just the Democrats. The presumptive nominee of the gutless opposition party, or GOP, Donald J. Trump, the quaff waffler himself, has assumed such a position, and it's even placed some of his own ardent defenders, such as Rush Limbaugh, in full defense mode. Rush had something to say, and I'm going to pull this up, and I think we'll find this kind of interesting too. Here we go.
I note here that some Trump supporters are getting nervous. There are two polls out. That Bloomberg poll that we talked about that has Trump down by 11 to Hillary. There's another poll, it's a CBS poll, that shows only 25% of Americans agree with Trump's policies and statements after the Orlando massacre.
And he went on to say that 51% disagreed with his position on that as well. Well, yes, of course they do, because anyone who's looking at this with any modicum of sanity, anyone who's approaching this in an objective fashion, is going to have to see that Trump is adopting the line of the frothing at the mouth Fabian Socialists who have no interest whatsoever in our fundamental and inalienable rights. Just as Cruz mentioned, these people are attacking our God-given rights. They're blaming us. That's what they always do. They always turn this around on us. It's always the blame America first crowd. And that's what they believe in. That's what they have always adhered to. That is their radical and twisted ideology. Well, enough is enough. This is the United States of America. We are a free people. That's the way that our government was designed. That's what our founding fathers had in mind when they devised this country 235 years ago. And the minute that we start moving towards this sort of ridiculous notion, this sort of ridiculous line of thought, is the minute that we betray our principles, our ideology, and all that we hold near and dear. We can't do that. We can't keep doing that because it is tearing this country apart at the seams. But remember, that's their goal. That's what these Fabian Socialists have been working for so tirelessly these past 150 years, this past century and a half. They have been incrementally working towards stripping and depriving each and every one of us of our fundamental and inalienable rights. And it's not an easy thing to realize. It's not an easy thing to wake up to open our eyes to, because when we see that this is what they are working towards right here in the land of the free and the home of the brave, it should send shivers down the spine of any decent, hard-working, red-blooded American citizen, because they have set their sights on we the people. They are attacking we the people. Not the ones that want to kill us. No, they're allying themselves with them. They are going after us because they loathe and despise who we are. And yes, I'm lumping Trump into that. Because anyone who's stupid enough to go out there and blame guns for this, to blame an inanimate object of this, either hates the people or is too stupid to hold or wield the reins of political power. Now, I know that that may make some people mad, but I don't care. It's the God's honest truth. And isn't it time we start getting back to the truth in this country? Isn't it about time that we start actually addressing these real problems that face each and every one of us on a daily basis, instead of sticking our heads in the sand and denying that there is this major problem that faces us? The only way we're going to be able to do that is to return to the key. And the key, as we have always stated here on Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, is the Constitution. That great social compact or contract, the greatest ever devised by the hands of men, yet divinely inspired by providence above. That is the key. That is what defines us as citizens, as a federalist, representative, Republican form of government. And that is what safeguards our rights. But the only way that it's going to be able to operate in such a manner as to be able to protect our rights is if we proactively maintain and safeguard our fundamental and inalienable rights that are contained within the clear and concise language of the Constitution, neatly printed out in the four corners of that document. That is the reality. And this is why we bring this show to you, to empower you, to allow you to stand up for what is right, and to allow you to resist the forces that would strip and deprive you of everything that matters. Because only you are empowered to do that. Only we, the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this country, have the ability to do so, and it is by design. Because we don't want a dictator in the United States. That's just the way it is. And with that said, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. Folks, I guarantee you she won't be stripping or depriving you of any of your rights. She's just going to pour you some alcohol. As always, folks, I'm your captain, Randy Wright, and I want to take this opportunity to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. I invite you to leave any questions, comments, or concerns you may have either here on our YouTube page or our Google Plus page or our Facebook page. And on top of that, I invite you to follow us on Twitter with the Twitter handle @RadioAviationEX. One more time, folks, that's @RadioAviationEX. And there you will find the departure board that lists my personal Twitter account, the Twitter account of my First Officer Jeremy Grapenton, our Blogspot page that includes audio blogs, and our Cafe Press account where you can find drinking glasses, apparel, all sorts of things with our regular logo on it and our first class passenger logo on it. With such a wide array of things available for you, I'm sure you can find something to meet your fancy. Just take a look at that and show your support for us, folks. We really do appreciate everything that you do for us. As always, thank you for flying the Wright Flyer. We'll see you next time. Do take care.